I'm going to call the August 11th meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust to order. We actually have no panelists who are hybrid, so we don't need to roll call everybody in. You need to let me know if Lakeisha or Brittany log in, and then we'll have to adjust. So we have a few people in attendance, and for the people at home, we have one person in the audience, which is Carl Moyson. The attendees, of course, are in front of everybody. The first thing that we're going to get through tonight is a initial proposal for 165 Worcester Street. This, of course, would be a LIP proposal. We have some information in front of us. We'll do our best to get it up on the screen for everybody at home. We have the applicant here. So in the LIP process, it typically will start with us. We'll provide our feedback and our recommendation to the select board. This is, of course, the very initial phase of it, but we get to meet the developer, talk about the project, kind of look through it, digest it, and then come up with any comments or concerns. And I wanted to make sure it's as free-flowing as possible. But we do have Carl here tonight. So if you want, Carl, why don't you come up and just briefly go through the proposal, sure. What your goals are, perhaps a little history of the actual parcel itself. For everybody who's watching this, or perhaps watching this a little further down the road, this is the part of Worcester Road where the old foreign auto body shop used to be that has been gone for probably a decade now. It's been a vacant lot. So with us tonight is Carl Moyson, owns the property and is trying to move forward with the project.
Correct. Carl Moyson, 35 Magnolia Lane, North Grafton. My son William is a owner as well. William's approximately 31 and obviously feeling the pinches of trying to buy his, he just got engaged and he's trying to buy his first home as well. And that's, having been in the financing portion of affordable housing, I understand where everybody's coming from with regards to buying of homes and renting of homes, etc. So I saw this particular piece of property came up. I had talked to the owner of it. He was a little frustrated with his efforts, so I decided to purchase it approximately 2.5 years ago. My plans to develop it as a 40B was for sale originally, but looking to make it into rental apartments, 6 units, 3 of them being affordable, the other 3 being normal pricing market-wise. I think, the property did have some environmental issues that have been resolved, and we've gotten a clean bill of health that way. That was several years ago. I have that report as well. Other than that, I've been a proponent of affordable housing and the rental of affordable housing for, like I said, 38 years. First-time home buyers struggle to get into properties, and affordable rents make it even harder to purchase a property because they can't save. This property is in a vibrant area. It's a kind of a busy street, but working with the folks over at Waterman Design, we were able to actually fit in a nice little, nice project. 6 units, approximately 750 square feet per unit. Has a garage in them, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. I was thinking about this the other day. I grew up, my folks owned their first home was a 3-bedroom ranch of 900 square feet. And when you think about that, and the 750 is not as small as you think it was. So it's a decent sized unit.
Did you say 650 square feet?
750.
750,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I might have said 650, but I'm sorry, 750.
Okay, so 2 bed, 1.5 bath?
Yep.
Okay.
The garage underneath.
Basically the same layout for each of the units, roughly?
Yeah, exactly the same.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
This particular If you go to the details of the page, this is a modular design. I've been up to a firm up in Claremont, New Hampshire, and they are a modular home builder, and they allow the developer to work with them directly. And this would be after the foundation's in place and the roads are in rough, scenario, they would be able to bring in the units and place them within basically 3 days. So there wouldn't be a lot of construction time other than the foundation and the infrastructure that would be needed. So they basically drop them onto the site, and my contractor would finish up they're about 94% complete. Having toured the facility a number of times, I can tell you that these are, energy efficient. Homestar, I think the program is. They're so tight that they actually need a blower within each unit to keep the air circulating. That's how tight they are. All the windows are, of high quality. Construction's immensely high quality, and very kind of straightforward.
Thanks, Carl.
Any questions or any thoughts?
So just sewer, water, and gas are all stabbed there.
They're right there on the street, yeah. 165 Worcester is, if you go by there, it's been a kind of an abandoned lot now for a number of years.
Yeah.
There used to be a couple of old cars and a storage facility type bin type thing, canister.
What was there the last time it was being used?
I believe it was an auto body shop or auto body repair, European auto body.
Yep.
Yep. And when was the last time that was active?
It's over a decade now.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been here 11 years. I don't ever remember
yeah,
anything being
about
there.
the same time, so, yeah.
Okay.
It's always been abandoned.
So just some brief history on the beyond that. The owner before Carl had proposed some duplexes through the ZBA. He unfortunately was not be able to get anywhere with it. No affordability component to it. This would be a standard lib, so it would go from us to the select board. The select board would have a crack at the negotiation of it. Being the size that it is, there's not a lot of flexibility in there to, as opposed to the 100-unit lib proposal, which Matt's going to go through a little bit later tonight. It's a pretty cut and dry project. The one, of course, caveat to that is being in safe harbor gives a lot of discretion for the ZBA. So, in a partnership with the trust and the developer, we had to look at some of those things. Does anybody have any questions for Carl while he's up here?
So what's your proposed AMI thresholds for these? Is it 80%?
Well, actually, yeah, that's exactly right, yeah.
Okay. And who would manage the property? Like, how would that work?
It would stay within the company, so my son and I would be managers at the time of closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you'd take care of the landscape and
Absolutely, yeah,
trash and plowing, that type
Yep.
of stuff? Okay.
exactly. It would be a true apartment type building.
So you're going to portfolio this? You're gonna
Myself?
hold on to it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much of a portfolio, but yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
So
Be
you're
the
gonna
first
you're gonna
one,
start
how's
your
that?
portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many of the units would be affordable or restricted?
Right now, I'm looking at 3, so it would be a 50-50 split.
Okay. And I must have missed this, but your son would be living on site?
No,
Okay.
no, he's just part of the company.
Got it.
He's been in real estate now since he got out of college, and
Yep.
I thought it would be good for him to be a part of that as well.
With 50% for why 50%?
It makes it more attractive. Like I said, I've been an advocate of affordable housing since I started working, and having seen, I've probably done in my career 38 years. I can't tell you how many first-time home buyer seminars and people just looking at me like, how much do you need to put down, and et cetera, and just shaking their heads and just walking away from being frustrated from the process. And then you look at the rents in the area, and it's just, this generation, like my son, is just gonna have a hard time, and it's gonna get harder. And it's not gonna be any easier. And so, you know, we talked about it, and I said, you know, what do you think? And he says, well, you know, I'm all in, whatever, you know, whatever you want me to do. So, we looked at it as an opportunity. I think the prior owner was, a little frustrated because he was, you know, he was going at it without the affordability involved in that, and you know, that's what's gonna make Grafton a better town. You know, we need that type of citizenship within the town, you know, and kids can't live here because of its, you know, they're gonna be out an hour away from here, never mind living in Grafton and working in town. So it's only about a mile and a half from the train station. The sidewalks on the road. There's the new mixed-use village is going up the street. It's an ideal location, it really is.
It's also a vacant lot. It's been a vacant lot for a decade.
That's overgrown,
Yeah.
getting unsightly.
It's pre-existing non-conforming, so
Right.
they're very, very limited uses for the parcel. So from a trust perspective and affordability component, it's a much smaller project than what we've, you know, been seeing, and what's come across our desk, but it fits the mold. I like that it's rental. You know, having 3 more units to our list of inventory that we can handle from a local perspective is good. It's a vacant lot. I'd like to see it developed, and you know, it's workforce housing. So, you know, even your AMI units are going to be, you know, sub 1,500 for a small starter family. It fits the mold. What it doesn't fit is the fact that it's not 150 units, and, you know, it doesn't, you know, do a lot of impact against SHI. But it is 6 units, and it's a small developer who's actually from the community that we live in.
Well, I mean, this is the sort of project we ought to be supporting, you know, frankly. I mean,
Right.
I'm glad this trust has been more aggressive in going in for larger projects to really make a dent in SHI. But, you know, along the way, over the course of the past 15 years, we've really sort of, I think the trust and the community has sort of ignored these smaller projects to our detriment. You know, you'll get pushback. I've already seen correspondence about it, but that's not anything unusual. It's very reasonable. You know, I think anybody else, Carl, maybe who wasn't from here, would have tried to cram 18 units into this space. And you know, you're going for something that I think is going to fit. It's 2 stories. There's ample parking, and you know, like you said, it's 750 square feet. You know, I think my apartment in Newton was a little bit larger than that, but you know, we had 2 kids in there for a while, so it's a good project.
Yeah, I would add too that, you know, like Bruce said, we don't typically see projects like this, but this is a, you know, a great example. Like if it can get through and everything, that, you know, these are possible. It doesn't have to be a single family home or a 150 unit apartment complex. It can be a small multifamily. So I think it's great. And is there, I'm just curious, like with the modular aspect of it, is it kind of like it's got to be 6 units or bust, or, you know, if there were changes requested by the ZBA, you know, up or down in units, do you have flexibility on that? I don't really know how the modular homes work.
Yeah, no, they are very good at customizing whatever we needed. So I took my first draft of it had basically 3 units, but they were twice the size and basically the same footprint. So I went back to him and sat down. We sat down for almost a day, and we went through everything. And the guy said, "Well, I could probably get 6 units in." That made it more attractive on a 50-50 basis.
Yeah.
You know, 3 units. You know, to your point about 100 units, it doesn't seem like a lot, but in a vacant lot, it's a lot. And the tax on that property grows by 6%. You know, 600%.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there is flexibility. I mean, I don't know if I could go much larger than that, and I don't know if we'd want to.
Yeah.
But, if I could get 8 units in there and they're happy with it, I'll try to do that as well.
But just from from 100 feet up, you get a spot and a half per, which fits our overlay districts just nicely, and that's something that we spend a lot of time on. And historically speaking, across the Commonwealth, if you look at projects, even the large ones, 1.5 spots is more than adequate for these large buildings, large complexes. It should fit here. There's plenty of egress on the street. The sight lines are perfect. Traffic is not an issue really there. It's a road designed for 35,000 and only sees 24 or 25,000 a day on Quincy Corner, and this is the left, so it's a little bit less. There's really nothing else that you're gonna put in the lot anyways,
Right.
and that's why you've seen it dormant for 10 years. So as far as economic stimulus is concerned, it would be 6 units against our SHI. You probably have a 4 or 5 times multiplier for what you're getting as far as taxes are concerned on the property. And it's rental. So it'd be 3 units that we can add to local preference, which is good for us. Does anybody else have any questions for Carl?
Just wondering, so the existing buildings, what are those?
Residential homes. The one on the left-hand side of the drawing is a yellow type single family,
Okay.
and there's a couple of sheds.
Is there one on your lot?
Yeah, based on the survey, yes.
That's
So,
the yellow one?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a couple of sheds. So those would stay or go?
No, the shed would probably be a little bit of a contention here.
Okay.
You don't want it on the lot lands, the lot line, so it'd probably be moved or have to be shifted over a little bit.
But is that a different lot?
No,
What? Sorry.
the lot line that is literally being the other, I don't know if it's a garage or some type of shed,
Yeah.
is literally right on the line of the lot line.
It's gonna make it hard to put up a fence. Yeah.
Okay. So that is another lot then, where that house and the 2 sheds are. That's a different lot than what you're proposing to build on.
Yeah, that's the neighboring lot.
Yeah,
Got it.
it's a neighboring lot.
It's on a butter. Okay.
Yeah.
And where are you parking people?
So if you go to the page behind the first page,
Yeah.
you have 6-car garage. You have 6 spots within the garage,
I see.
and then
then
you
you
have
the exterior parking. Okay.
right.
So are there 12 total spots, it looks like?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
actually 6 plus the 6 under the garage.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's room for 2 cars, and there's actually a handicap spot
Oh, yeah.
right there.
Yeah, the only small concern I have with it is the parking. I know 2 spots per unit is on the high end as a ratio, but for such a small number of units, if somebody has guests over,
Sure.
there's no street parking on this road, so it kind of makes it hard. But at the same time, I feel like it's far from a deal breaker. So
Okay. Thank you. I wish I could get more in there, but
yeah, I don't know where I would
I don't know how I could
putting
do
one.
that. Yeah.
It's like some kind of logic puzzle.
Well, you're beating the ratio, which
Yeah.
we would hold a much larger development to. All right, so next steps, everybody's getting the first pass of it. So if you come up with anything over the next couple of weeks, feed it back to us. We'll get it back to Carl. As far as the trust position on supporting the project, it can come in a myriad of different ways, and we can discuss that as well. Providing the insight into the LIP process, we have a select board rep with us now, so we can gauge kind of what they're gonna need on their ends. But being in safe harbor and kind of being on new grounds, it would behoove us to kind of have that dialogue with the select board, from a trust perspective before we get too far down the road. And just seeing what they're gonna want. And then eventually, of course, it's gonna go to the ZBA. So we need to reach out there. I have reached out to the chairs to, kind of organize a meeting, amongst all three parties to kind of go over some of this stuff as we see future projects, with the planning board and the ZBA rather. This would be, of course, something that, you know, we need to make sure that when we pitch it, so to speak, you know, we can do it on behalf of you just as much as, you know, if it was our project ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Because, you know, my understanding of it is now, you know, they're gonna wanna see, you know, what the impact is, why it's beneficial for the town. You know, why should they not just say no because, you know, we're in safe harbor and we've done our bit. So we need to, you know, pay attention to some of those things. But as far as a project on vacant land, 6 units fits in there just fine. A very similar project that's a little bit larger down in South Grafton now. Essentially the same footprint. So as you're going down 122A, right before you get to Cumberland Farm, is a brand new building there. That's much larger than this one's going to be, but essentially that's the same design. So if you want to see something that's very similar to what they're trying to accomplish here, it's a mini version of that, just for some real world perspective. And there's a myriad of things that we can help with. We can help with the WIP process. We can help with DHCD. You know, there's grant programs that we have access to that you're not going to have access to that we can, you know, bring to the table. So I guess for the next couple weeks, if we could get, you know, some type of pro forma,
Okay,
you know, just show us what the rental rates are going to look like, show us what 80% of AMI is going to look like. Let us wrap our heads around it, and then just be open to feedback from us.
absolutely.
So from the trust's perspective, just focus everything through staff, so we don't run into open meeting law violations or anything in an open discussion. And then any more questions as we have, we can just send them all to Amber, as a matter of fact. And they'll go through the appropriate channels. Does that work for you, Carl?
Sure, absolutely.
If anybody else doesn't have any more questions, we can move on to the next piece.
It's a one, with all the units being 2-bedroom, how does that kind of play in with the 40B, number of unit ratios that they like to see there?
My understanding is they're looking for 25% on an affordable 40B.
Right, but I thought there was, don't remember what the numbers are, but like some have to be like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or is it like there has to be like some number of 3 bedrooms or?
I wonder if it gets waived for small.
Yeah.
So the template design and the hierarchy of how their stages is based on density.
Okay.
So, you know, we can go and seek that information for you.
Okay.
That shouldn't be too hard. But I'm quite certain that a 6-unit complex like this is not going to fit the same mold. Also, we have some liberty there as well because, you know, we're going through a LIP process.
That's what I was
So,
thinking too.
You know, we're going to have some design features that, you know, could go to the select board and they could want something else.
Sure.
You know, they could want a different look or aesthetics or something like that, and the ZBA could want those things too.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry too much about DHCD as far as all the units counting. in a
Right,
project like
it's
this.
definitely a question that should be answered though, for sure.
That's fine. So if in the modular aspect, and 750 square feet, you're not working with much.
No.
But if 1 was 1 bedroom, 2 were 2 bedrooms, and 3 were 3 bedrooms, or something to that effect, perhaps they could do that.
Okay. Yeah, man, I'm open to, you know, another design. I mean, I'm not married to this modular thought process, but it would, I think it seems to be a little bit more of a cut and dry scenario, so.
It's workforce housing.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the 2-bedroom stuff, you're kind of in the middle of what our housing production plan is gonna actually look for, which is what we should be, you know, cognizant of as a trust. You know, 3 bedrooms are, you know, if we lack anything, it's 3 bedrooms. And so that's, part of our goals are to create that type of inventory. But if it's impossible to do, it's impossible to do. So we gotta make sure it's a financially viable project too, so it doesn't get into the point where you're in construction and it just doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And we've all wasted our time.
So Carl, I'd recommend you do a couple of things. If you can get some actual pictures or mock-ups of what the modular units look like,
Okay.
I think that would be helpful. I imagine the company that you're working with probably has some materials to kind of show what as-built units look like.
I could try, yeah.
So I want to be
Yeah,
conscious.
I'm-
I want to be conscious of the
No.
fact that this is a small development and you
Sure.
don't have a ton of resources to do this kind of stuff. But I'm also thinking about the fact that we're in safe harbor and we want to be. Well, you just want to position yourself as best as
Sure.
you can, I
Yeah.
guess. The other thing that I have a little bit of a long-term concern with is just the management plan. So it's just 6 units, but you should put some thought into how you're going to manage that over time, right? Keep the landscaping up and, that's sort of stuff. Because if you guys aren't doing it anymore, it was much easier with Eastland, for example, because they've got a management company, but they're able to do it at scale.
Right.
That's a different proposition, but obviously we want, is it all of the affordable housing in town to be in very well,
Yeah.
maintained shape with that's attractive and where people want to live and all that. So
Other thing as well, it kind of dovetails on the property management side is the monitoring agency who's gonna,
Yeah.
make sure they're looking at the finances of it. We can provide you with some companies that handle that type of thing,
Okay.
even at a small scale like this. And there are some developers in town, Sotir being one of them, that we can put you in touch with. His is, over 30 units, so it's a little bit different, but he's on the smaller scale as far as, developer size is concerned. So he would have some access to resources that he can probably use as well.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
All right.
Just real quick, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of, way to bypass this, but I did find the rules for 40Bs, it says at least 10% of units in a comprehensive permit development must have 3 or more bedrooms. So I don't know if that applies to small multifamily. Obviously, it's much easier when it's a big building, but that's something, you're gonna have to figure out. So that would be less than 1 unit, technically 10%, but just something to look out for because it's going to come up.
Kathleen O'Donnell is actually our attorney, represents the trust. Could you move her into the panel? She has a question. You can probably shed some light on this.
She
piece.
probably has an answer
Yeah.
to the question.
I think only Bill can do that.
Bill, can you
Whoever's hosting it said.
okay. Kathleen, give us a second, we'll move you over.
There she is.
Good evening. This is Kathleen O'Donnell, and I just wanted to address the 3-bedroom unit question. Is that in my experience on projects that are smaller than 10 units, DHCD is not as stringent about that requirement.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for while we got you in the panelist side?
No, I'll wait.
All right. Perfect. All right. Thanks for coming, Carl.
Thank you, everybody.
Carl.
Appreciate
Thanks,
your
Carl.
time. Thank you very much.
Just for logistics perspective, you can reach out directly to me.
Okay,
And then we'll kind of focus everything through staff so we have a nice clean flow of information.
fair enough. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
Carl.
you. All right. So while Carl's wrapping up here, I had a chance to meet with Chris and Amber Was it this week?
No. Thursday last week.
It's Thursday of last week. Just to kind of go over, the archetype of our RFP for the housing production plan. Going off our last conversation, and then some of course, the rumblings about master plans and things of that nature. The housing production plan is something we have to do. We did reach out to Karen Soderberg to see if she's still available in the space. She did our last one.
Our last two, at least.
Hasn't it been the last two?
Yep.
All right. So there's some continuity there. Of course, we have to go through the RFP process. But essentially, I reached out to a couple different departments and asked for some input on some of the information that might overlap in a housing production plan and information that would be of value to those departments. They're going to get a lot of demographic information. The last housing production plan, I know we've all read it. But it's, there's an abundance of information in there that's important to general, decision making on different planning board, ZBA, select board with the LIB process and things like that. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of incorporated as much as we could, so we weren't in our own vacuum here. And I need some permissions to take it to the next level, so to speak, of actually building the RFP, getting something before you, or if we want to handle it all on a workshop basis. I'll leave that up to everybody here. So essentially we have a couple of template RFPs. I'm sure Kathleen can actually help us in this regard as well. But take everything you liked from the last housing production plan. We would like to roll in the planning board and the ZBA for some comments, and then the select board as well. And even conservation commission and some of the, the ancillary departments that, might have an impact on some of the decision making that would stem from the housing production plan. But essentially it comes down to what we want to do. So, and it's going to end up coming out of our budget. So does the people want me to kind of just get it into a format that we can pick apart at a meeting, or do we want to have a workshop and kind of just reinvent the wheel?
Well, I mean, it's only an RFP, so if you want to draft one, we can just bring it and vote on it and discuss it here. It shouldn't be overly complicated.
No, as people want different add-ons to it. It might change the scope of it a little bit, and I just wanted to make sure that if I'm gonna move forward and task staff, and Chris of course is going to be helpful in this scenario, so just make sure we get at least 75% of what we want to get accomplished in that first RFP, so everybody knows, because a lot of people here have never done one. I would imagine a lot of people haven't done an RFP yet either, so I can get it to the point where it's not consuming a lot of our time, and then we can discuss like individual pieces. We'll put everything, I'll make sure that everything's in it that's required to be in it, and then some of my thoughts on it, and then some of the stuff that we had talked about in our last meeting, and then we can go through it and start it.
So, Bruce, the last one was done in 2018, right?
Yeah.
So presumably sometime 2017 we had an RFP, I would guess, or maybe 2018. Couldn't we just start with that?
We did, but the process back then, it's going to incorporate the new census data, which of course is really relevant to what we're trying to get accomplished. But it also, Ed was here for that one as well. There's some things I disliked about that process.
About the RFP itself?
Yeah,
Okay.
the action plans, and we spent a lot of time focusing on the stuff that didn't seem like we were gonna have a real say in, anyways. And it had properties like Hudson, 25 Worcester Street, which of course is in our portfolio now. But it didn't spend a lot of time focusing on the messaging and the information that was required to kind of convey the point that this is why we want those properties, not just selecting properties that could be developed.
Yeah, I mean,
So did the RFP direct that we wanted to include certain properties? Is that?
That was just part of the scope is that what they were looking at as far as, she basically spent a lot of time researching different aspects of it. And then we gave her a list of, current ongoing projects, what was a list of like 8 or 9 things that we wanted to get accomplished as a trust.
I think I was still on FinCom the last time this was discussed, but I do remember a few select board members voting it down because they didn't understand what it was. We have to have one in order for any of the units that we develop
Yeah.
to be counted towards SHI. And when Ann did it, she did it for us back in 2014, and I was on the trust then, and she did it for us again in 2018. Frankly, it was an update. I mean, it's the same document, but with different demographic data, different statistics, different projects. And in the middle of the thing, there is, sort of like a projection, like hopes and dreams of like what you can get accomplished in the next 4 years, given the money that you've got, given the property that you have. But to be candid, like nobody ever takes the plan down and is like, okay, this week we're working on this project because this isn't our housing production plan. It was I always thought a lot of sort of unrealistic expectations about what the trust could get done, even under the best of circumstances. Take 25 Worcester Street, we've had that property now for 2 years and there still isn't a shovel in the ground. So, but what I have always found helpful about them is really the demographic data, the income, the amount of units. Really, this one could be or would be in a position to articulate we're in the center of a housing crisis, and Grafton we can't afford to pretend that we're not part of that. People for years talk about Boston, but now, we're talking about Worcester, people being forced out of Worcester, they can't afford that, families not being able to age in place in Grafton, people not being able to afford entry into Grafton. And I think that's really something that we can focus on. So to the extent, Bruce, that, that's what you're talking about, like what are we focusing on the message of this time? What is also good about them, though, is you can go through, particularly with the executive summary, and be able to fashion your message and say, okay, look, this is a particular data set that I'm looking for this time. So with 25 Worcester Street and the elder use of it, I really was able to go to the executive summary and identify, 1 in 3 Grafton elders is housing insecure. To say nothing of living in Massachusetts and, high medical costs and all the rest. We were operating off of 2 straight overrides. It's difficult to age in place in Grafton, so why not do this? And that message wasn't in the executive summary, but you can fashion it from the data in there,
Sure. I guess I'm just focusing on the RFP document itself.
Yeah.
Everything that you just said, I totally agree with, and I understand like the purpose of the document and everything. But going out to bid to put one together, like a lot of what you just talked about, would happen during the actual development of the production plan itself.
That's right.
I guess
Directing them, but the RFP itself to go out to find a provider to do it, I would hope that it wouldn't be a million miles away from
Right.
what we did 5 years ago.
Right.
but
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not going to say it's a million miles away from what we did in the past and what we had updated, but in my mind, I don't know if I want to follow the analogy. I'm a good 100 miles away. So, I'm not a million miles away. But
Okay. I haven't seen it.
I want to build an actual document that can go from one trust to the next and have a continuity of information that I think is very important to us. So the next generation of trust members, the next generation of planning board, ZBA, select board members can have a document that actually says something real to them. A lot of our housing production plan is pipe dream stuff. Stuff that really you can't get accomplished in the sales pitch that's in there. I wanted to make sure it incorporates planning board data, planning board input, which I didn't last time, ZBA input, which rarely get put into these conversations, and the select board as it currently sits, and then of course the planner and stuff like that, which was in the last housing production plan. But our scope is gonna be, it's gonna incorporate a lot more hours, a lot more people to navigate and talk to. So, it'll be a little bit broader. than we've used in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still an RFP. We don't want to be too descriptive with it. I get it.
That's the
I
thing, is
understand what you're saying.
I wasn't sure how directive we were trying to be with,
Yeah.
with what's in the RFP. Fine. So you're looking for some latitude to just go craft something and come
Yeah,
back to us?
I don't want to usurp any authority from anybody here who wants to do it themselves or wants to, do it in more of an open format, like a workshop type of format. I kind of found it easier just, to have something to work from, especially if a lot of people aren't too familiar with the territory.
Okay.
So essentially, you'll come up with a first draft. We'll iterate from there.
I just want to get it to the point where it's got everything that has to be in there,
Mhm.
and then some of the thoughts and ideas, and then we can, because we don't have a lot of time to hurry up and get this done. We got to start on it in September, because it's due by the end of the year, essentially. For the most part.
It's a short turnaround.
Yeah, so it's
All right.
got to get done pretty quickly.
I'm just gonna put a pitch in to have Chris do some or most of it with input from you. It just seems like developing an RFP should be something staff should.
Oh, no,
be
no,
doing.
I'm not gonna draft it. We have a draft to work from. Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
dedicating that
All right,
amount
fine.
of work.
Then I'm happy with that. I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, no, trust me.
I'm aware of the work dynamics of this group and,
Yep.
okay.
No, Amber and Chris and I met to kind of go over loosely how to approach it and what we did in the past, just so I had a good firm understanding before I came before you and knew what
Okay.
I was committing to.
Great.
But yeah, Amber and Chris are like doing everything, so.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna pretend like I did volumes of work here.
All right.
No, they're gonna do it. All right, so everybody's comfortable with that?
Yep.
All right, purchase and sale agreement 17 and 27 Upton Streets. I talked to Beacon this week. They're gonna come to our next meeting, or sometime in between with their proposal, and some of the substantive changes between them and GSX. They had to do an assignment of the PNS, which of course has to go to the select board for review. The piece of that we kind of looked at was the barn, which is something that, again, not a hill we probably want to die on, but it's something that we can revisit now that the PNS is being looked at again. But the select board do have to assign it, and I think they're sending it, or Evan has a copy of it, so it just needs to make it onto an agenda.
He said Jenny and he are still reviewing, but she believes that they have a clause in there that allows them to just assign it themselves. We
Okay.
don't. they
That
don't-
would be a change from the last time we met with them, so that would be great.
I'm just telling you what he told us in our last meeting.
Awesome.
Yep.
So we can just write off that whole month, and Jenny has changed her mind. That'll work for us. All right, so that's all I have for that. I'll have some more updates when we go into our next meeting. And I think I doubled up on the agenda.
Yep.
So look at that, 3 and 4 are done. And fifth is Mr. Opton.
Yeah, so in the packet, there should be a set of slides. I won't probably spend as much time as I did with the select board. But I thought it would be good to review
Andy, get a good picture of scratches.
essentially some of the details on the Eastland proposed lips that we have voted to endorse. So on the sort of the basically, I'm trying to figure out what to focus on here. So in terms of the agenda, we'll just go through the highlights of the municipal impact analysis that Eastland did. They presented that here, so we don't have to go into too much detail on that. We'll go into the AMI thresholds that they've agreed to. I had in the packet, we put the memorandums of agreement, which detail basically the language that Ginny should be approving and or revising. So she's reviewing that stuff for us. In those memorandums of agreement, things that are laid out here are memorialized, and we'll execute on that in terms of an agreement. So, the big, sort of benefit, one of the big benefits that we've gotten, from these tulips are the AMI thresholds, and the subsidy rates are listed here. So, to my knowledge, these will be the first units in Grafton, assuming this gets through ZBA, at 50 and 60% AMI. So you can see the savings and the market rates for rents versus the subsidized rent in there, and the subsidies are considerable. So, it's not a ton of units at the end of the day, but the select board felt that this really is moving the dial in terms of, there are some 3-bedroom units in there.
And Matt, can I just make an
Yeah.
observation here? When was the data collected about the market rate rent for the 2 and 3 bedrooms?
So this would have been a couple months ago.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my observation is that even now, that some of that rent it looks low to me because of the changing economic atmosphere around rental units.
The market rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the time shovels are in the dirt, and by the time people are moving in, you're going 50 and 60% of AMI. The price that people are going to pay for rent here is going to look more familiar to, I think, Grafton residents than the market rate, right? Because it really is increasing so quickly that by the time this is so necessary, because by the time these get built, 50, 60% of AMI is going to look a lot like normal prices from 2 decades ago. Like $1,300 for 2-bed, 2-bath, like that seems familiar to me. That's what rent used to be.
$3,100 for a 3-bedroom.
Right.
Jeez.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
absurd.
That's a mortgage.
That's a yeah.
$500,000 home.
That's what people consider a mortgage payment.
It is.
And that the market rate rent is that's from the state, right? Or it's not.
No, I think when they came to us, they pulled it as a composite of area units,
Yep.
if I remember that conversation correctly. This was Eastland, the 3 guys, I forget their names. I wouldn't get them right even if they were here, but
Chris, Chad, and somebody.
yeah, that's them.
Sure.
Yeah, so you can see, they've got 2-bed, 2-bath at $1,100-$1,200, which you can't find those in Grafton anywhere,
Right.
right? So, and of course these would have local preference, which would be much more likely than ownership units at being fulfilled locally. So, it's a lot of benefit to this. You can see the level of subsidies. The way that I went into the discussions with them is that we were favoring this approach of trying to actually move the dial with affordability versus getting something else like sidewalks, or which we are getting actually. So we had asked for sidewalks to
What
connect.
is it with the sidewalk kick? I see sidewalks everywhere. Sidewalks in this, there's sidewalks in ARPA.
People
Well-
like to walk without being hit by cars.
It's well, it's been for a year now. It's been one of the select board's goals
Okay.
to do sidewalks. It's something that if you talk to residents, people want sidewalks. So I know they're expensive, like on a per mile basis. They're difficult to put in. They're impossible to put in a lot of areas, but where we can and where we can connect neighborhoods, especially like this, there's a real stigma to quote unquote density. It's not even quote unquote to any kind of dense development. We should be, for where it makes sense, and where we have density going in, we should be connecting those neighborhoods to other neighborhoods of single families and treating it just like another neighbor, because that's what it is. These are people that will live in town, their families, they're going to have kids in the school system, they're going to get on the train next to other people in town.
Workers too, productive members of society, right?
All of that. So yeah, so sidewalks. But the thinking was that we should basically, as we were considering the benefits, try to benefit affordability over some one-time money for putting a park in or doing a sidewalk or sewer connections or whatever. They're doing a lot of that anyway, so we are getting, we'll go into some of the other benefits, but this is sort of the main benefit, and this is in perpetuity. So, this just continues on. So it's a yearly benefit that Grafton will realize. So this is huge. I mean, it's a massive benefit for everybody. So
I do feel like in their proposal to you guys that they incorporated a lot of the stuff that we talked about when all of us were here before them. It seems like on face
they did.
that they took a lot of our suggestions with them. So
As a developer, they have. Let's go to the next slide. We'll talk through some of that stuff.
Just you can keep going into the slide, but a question on the AMI. I always get confused on this. That's the 50-60% stuff. That's how they determine the rent. In terms of the eligibility, though, you could have a family that's up to 100% AMI, and they could still get into the 50% units. Or am I? It is clear as mud on all the government websites on how it actually works.
the eligibility for this particular project, I don't think is based on unit per unit. It's based on a profile for the area. So somebody who, I don't think they would restrict like a 50% AMI unit next to a 60% AMI unit wouldn't have a separate lottery for it.
Got it. Okay.
But yes, it is clear as mud. And if you try to talk to somebody from DHCD, it gets no better.
Yeah, because what I previously thought, which I believe is incorrect, was that in order to be eligible for a unit that is priced based off 50% AMI, your income must be 50% AMI or less. I do not think that's the case, because that causes a problem where it's not affordable.
Yeah.
Like for people that are at 50% of AMI for their income to try to pay, $1,000, $1,100, like.
Just real quick, as Kathleen get her hand.
Yeah. Would love clarification on this.
Because you confused me just saying AMI in two different sentences.
She there still or no?
It's showing
I think we lost her.
Is that my fault? No, it's only 8:45.
I noticed she dropped off a little while ago.
All
But no, that's a good question. My recollection, because we've never pushed one of these things through before. When we've gotten close, we had someone from Chapa the last time we came close come in, and I think we determined what the criteria are going to be both for rental, AMI, and for income, and you can set boundaries. But you're right, because someone making 50% of the area mean income renting for that price is going to be unaffordable to them. But what you also don't want to do is have somebody at 120% coming in being like,
Totally.
hey, look what I got.
I can I just ping Kathleen on email? I'll just ask her. All right, I'll do it.
I think she's
I
back.
got
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
there
here.
she is.
Did you catch any of the convoluted, meandering question I asked?
Well, I'm actually sitting on two meetings, this one and another one.
I can repeat myself. I got a first go at it, so maybe this one will be better. Want me to just restate it?
Yes, please.
So my question is, for the the units we see here, the select board negotiated them as part of the LIP. So the 50% AMI, 60%, 80%. That's basically generating what the rent is for that unit. My question is there any tie-in to eligibility? So in order to be eligible for a unit that is priced at 50% AMI, does your income need to be at 50% or less AMI? Or is
Yes, that is area median income. So the rents have to be affordable to somebody with a 50% area median income.
Yeah.
Is how it works.
But-
So I have my income level is X, and so the rent is going to be determined by what I can afford. with that income. So the old rule of like it was 1/3 of my income should be spent on rent. So that's what caps the rents for these people. So you look at what their income is, and the rent is reduced to what that person is determined to be able to afford.
So if we're talking about a 50% AMI unit, and
Yep.
that means the person applying for it, or I guess the person selected for it, anybody could,
Yeah.
but yeah, the person selected for it has to be no higher than 50% AMI, and then the rent is determined by the income of the person who got selected.
Yes.
So if someone's at 45%, they're paying rent that is calculated based on 45%.
If that's what, I mean, what you don't, or you can't do it in a way that the developer then is completely screwed either. So, you have to say, okay, fine, somebody making 50% of area median income. And so this chart is sort of saying they're assuming that when they did this, that that what a person could afford with 50% of area median income at that time when they did this chart would only be paying $960 a month for a one bedroom or one bath.
So Kathleen, I guess my question is the 50% AMI rent determined based on what 1/3 of their gross
Yeah, I
take
mean,
home would be
it's
per
usually
month?
it's the rent, it's the utilities, the heat's
Okay.
in there, all that sort of stuff. It's not just the basic rent. It's whatever it costs to kind of heat and provide water. All those kinds of expenses get included in that.
Okay.
So I go out in a lottery and I look for people that are making X amount of money, and they apply and they prove that they haven't got some rich uncle in the backyard in Kentucky, and all that sort of stuff. And so that we look at their assets, and then they can get on the list and they can apply to have this apartment, and the rent will be adjusted to whatever the income level was for that unit. So you're going to have a regulatory agreement that's going to say, and an affordable housing restriction that'll say that these are the rents, or these are the units that are available for whatever income levels.
Okay.
And you won't know. I mean, $960 is what that would be now, but that next month it could be $1,500.
Right. Right.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have to get bogged down in this.
But thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
Did I clear it up enough for you?
Yep.
Okay.
That was a good refresher.
And just remember, we don't do anything local as far as lottery is concerned here. We ship it all off.
Yep.
Right. So, you know what? That might be a good thing is to have,
Chapel.
Chappa come back out.
Yep.
Kind of.
Is Chappa still doing it?
They did the last one for us, so
Yeah.
But it has been some time.
Yeah, I mean they were getting out of that business the last time I heard, but maybe they got back.
I mean, with the amount of volume, with the amount of inventory that is going to be developed over the next couple of years, it probably
Right.
behoove us to do something local, anyways. But I mean, we'll see. We've never had big, apartment complexes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but usually at that point, you're not the ones that are picking it. You're going to tell the developer that they have to provide the monitoring agent,
Yeah.
and pay for it.
True.
Yep, that's Pine Street is they have them in place. GSX we
Yeah.
negotiated, but it's changing now. So
Yeah, right, because that's going to Beacon.
yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember who Beacon uses, but yeah, but that's what you're going to be. And that's the nice part where you sort of it's like telling the maid where to clean. You're just gonna say they have to do it and they have to pay for it.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when they have they do it on their own. So
Right, absolutely.
but they're not using the same one as Pine Street, which would have been convenient because they would have handled
Yeah,
100
yeah.
units in town. But whatever,
Hmm.
can't have it all.
So the headline on this, I think, is, the 336 annually. So it's a significant subsidy, in perpetuity. So
Yeah, that's great.
let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, great job on the select board for focusing on that versus, you know, just trying to get money for the budget or whatever. Admirable.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Eastland were really responsive. They did a lot of the other things that we asked for anyways. So, you know, in addition to that, we got the AMI restrictions lowered, and so that was great. So I think you guys are pretty much on board with this. You know, we're looking at an 800K between the two developments, 800K rent subsidy in perpetuity. We were able to get a few 3-bedroom units. That's another thing that's they weren't proposing initially any 3-bedroom units. The Housing Trust has been very clear that that's one of the goals. So there's not a ton of them, but we did get a few 3-bedroom units added in, and those ended up like being the biggest subsidy, like dollar wise. So it's just when you add those 3-bed 2-bath units in for rental subsidies, it's really expensive for the developer. So they couldn't put a whole lot of those in, but we did get a few, so that was good. And obviously, you know, there'll be some monetary contributions that'll be coming too that we'll go over in the next slide. So go ahead. So we should expect a year and 8 months approximately with this number of units. So an additional 2 years if both of these projects go through. So again, I think this is the way forward, hopefully for Grafton. I hope that the ZBA will embrace this approach where we find good developers that are good partners, and we encourage them to develop sensible developments in the right parts of town that we can support to keep us in safe harbor, because it's just puts us in a better situation as opposed to just traditional 40Bs. We probably wouldn't have got the AMI thresholds changed and all the other benefits that we got from this development had this been a traditional 40B. So going through the LIP process is hugely beneficial. So if we can stay in safe harbor by kind of allowing some of these more dense developments in with the additional benefits, we'll continue getting these benefits, and we'll be able to direct where the development happens in town.
This will give us more than 2 years. This is going to be 7 or 8. So if Pine Street comes to fruition and this one comes to fruition, you'll be well past the 10% with GSX as well.
I mean, mother necessity is part of this. Obviously, part of our economic growth plan is to have more workforce housing, and there's obviously a demand in the area, so developers are interested in working with us at town. But a lot of this has only been made possible by a change of attitude about whether or not we can do this. It's still amazing to me that we're in safe harbor, because getting back to the housing production plan 4 years ago, when people on the select board were voting against it, what we were told was, well, why are we even bothering? You're never going to get to safe harbor. You're never going to get to that 10%. And that was by design, right? Because people didn't want to even contemplate, the political pain necessary to get something like this done. And now here we are. And so, with a change in attitude and some acceptance, I think, by people who are in these positions that, yes, we do need to responsibly develop housing so that people can afford to move here, people can afford to live here and afford to stay here, then we can stay within that safe harbor, potentially indefinitely. So
I would say that's as long as the market stays the way it is and development prices, although they are continuing to rise, and the cost of financing is taking a steep path upwards. Hopefully these projects stay viable over the next couple of years. So this is all well and good, great stuff. I'm glad we got a LIP proposal together, but now comes the hard part. So what type of coordination is the select board going to want from the trust as far as our role in being cheerleaders for this, our role in participating in the discussions with ZBA? Because, just like 25 Worcester Street, just like the GSX project up on, or Beacon project, whatever you call it now, talking about it's great, but what designs are in place from the select board level to actually get this accomplished, to get it through ZBA, get a shovel in the ground, and what role do you guys want us to play?
So I wouldn't say that it's the select board's responsibility necessarily to get this through ZBA. as you say. But you know, I
Then
got
whose is it?
I-
Is it us or is
it's
it?
the developers. They're the ones that are going before ZBA.
I
They're
understand.
the ones with the development. They're the ones that ultimately are going to profit from this. Having said that,
We are too.
we are
We're
to
getting some sidewalks. We're getting some cash back. We're getting some AMI things that we
sure.
proposed.
No, look, that's why the select board endorsed it. That's why I did this proposal or this walkthrough. I'm going to be doing this hopefully before ZBA when
That's what I'm getting
the
at.
developers come for that initial hearing. But ultimately it's up to the developer to work with ZBA. So they worked really well with the town, and I'm sure that they'll work really well with ZBA as well. So my personal opinion, I'm going to go and advocate for this in that initial hearing. I think it's going to be really important for the housing trust to have some membership and some perspective. They're really important. So, the select board may not have supported the Affordable Housing Trust in all of the ways that you wanted this year, but I feel like we have done a pretty good job. Now that we have some proposals that are going to ZBA, it's time for the Housing Trust to give back and return that same level of support in trying to advocate for these because you know who's going to show up to these meetings.
Yeah, people
Right.
that don't want it to happen.
Sure.
So, we need people that are going to support affordable housing who are going to advocate for these projects. Once it's in the process, once they've agreed to, they have to do a hearing, but once they've agreed to take on the development in those initial meetings, I think, we can all take a little bit of a step back because at that point it's pretty much ZBA going through its process.
Yeah.
Do you know what the schedule is, Matt? Like, how soon can we expect an initial meeting with ZBA?
So, with the endorsement in hand, they have filed with the state already for the initial lip, which is the Upton Street. I would guess September, October timeframe. It's coming up pretty quick.
Mhm.
We haven't sent our letter. We haven't signed our letter of endorsement. I think that's happening maybe it happened this week. So they just got that. So that's probably November timeframe, I'd guess,
3 months.
by the
then.
time they get it back. So.
3-ish months.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be there.
All right. So I guess being there is fine. Stuff like that. I think we're supposed to be there anyways. I guess what I was getting at is, LIPs and friendly 40Bs are partnerships between developers and the town. And I understand it's on them to give them all the technical information, an understanding of the project, go through the normal variance process of why the design is not going to have an impact and, things of that nature and go through it. But as far as the narrative is concerned for why the LIP proposal is structured the way it is, I think is more credible coming from us than you guys. And so if that's our torch to, take in there with us, then, perhaps we should reach out to Eastland and coordinate with them. So we can go to the ZBA and say, this is why it's a good project. This is why it's a good project over the next couple of years. And conveniently, we'll be working on the housing production plan at the same time. So we can provide some good updated information to them, saying, this is going to keep us in safe harbor for an extended period of time. This is workforce housing. This is what the state, needs. This is what is in demand. This is why it's a viable project, and we can take it from there. So the select board aren't, necessarily the cheerleader. I mean, you'll be there, and of course you'll be with us anyways. But we just need to have a coordinated effort. That's all.
Mhm.
So it probably would have been helpful for Prentice Place, although there was a lot of, that project that was difficult anyway. But the select board basically said, yeah, this is fine, and then see you later, and it went on its merry way. And then, a couple years later, it came back again, and it had to be renegotiated. But there was no real, hand-holding at the time. This, their proposal that you negotiated with them, I think is a substantive effort to have a real significant impact on what we can do here.
Well, maybe all the more reason to have, what's her name? Laura from MHP come in and talk to us a little bit about you know, what we want our messaging to be in terms of Upton and Pleasant before we go into
Sure.
November. So maybe the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, we can add that too. That'd be great. And then, just,
Yeah, I'd be on
We'll
board with that. I
coordinate
mean, we
through.
need to have our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
They're not there yet.
okay. So, but as we coalesce around what the narrative needs to be and what our, you know, our presentation to the ZBA from the town's perspective, you know, maybe we'll take a couple steps and then through you, we'll go to the select board and say, yeah, here's what we came up with.
Sure.
And so we can all be on board with it.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, we don't want to be telling the same story. I
Yeah.
think. So,
And just, I just don't, you know, well, you were gonna do that, now you're gonna do that and stuff like that. Just let us take the lead on it. I'm sure the select board would be fine with that. So, well, we'll see. You can go ask them. I'm sure they're going to be. Do you have anything more?
there's a ton more slides, so we can just flick through them quick.
Who put this together, Matt?
I did.
Oh, that's nice.
So let's see. We talked about density a little bit. Yeah. So one of the concerns was kind of the density of the actual development on the property. So they're at about 50% of the total kind of developable area. They, access to walking trails, so they're gonna have basically a path, very well defined path that goes through, so that the adjoining neighborhoods can get to the walking trails behind them. They're not going to be developing in any of the wetland resource areas, and the lot coverage is pretty low. So you can move to the next slide. Yeah, this is just all about the developer themselves. So they've been very good. They had a bunch of meetings with the residents. They did a whole walkthrough. Most of the select board was there. They've staked out where the buildings were going to be, where the parking was going to be. They talked about all of the sight lines from the adjacent neighborhood. So this is the Pleasant Street one. There's a street that's directly abutting where the actual development is going to be. So they were very good about walking the entire site and saying, okay, from here we're going to have a 15-foot berm, and then above that there's going to be 12 to 14 feet of vegetation that's going to go up with white pines. And so basically nobody's going to be looking into your backyard from their third story bedroom windows or whatever. So they basically kind of talked through all those concerns. They started on Pleasant Street with 6 buildings. This is what they brought to the development team originally. So now they've reoriented those buildings, and you can go to the next slide. They've reduced them down to 4, and they've moved them all basically significantly away from the Peters Way development as well. And again, all thinking about the privacy of that abutting neighborhood. So they've already made, even before they go to ZBA, they've made significant changes to their concept designs already. So again, they've been real good developers, trying to really be paying attention to neighborhood concerns. So you can go to the next one. Let's see. Yeah, I think we talked about most of this. There was a guy on 1 Peters Way. The people that lived there were concerned about flooding. So as we did that site walk down on Pleasant Street, they basically showed exactly what they were going to do to address that. So they're going to be taking care of an existing problem for one of the neighbors. And I think we've talked about all this other stuff. So
What's the bus stop shelter for community and abutters?
I think it's just going to be basically at the front of their the development. They'll have
A
a
potential
bus stop shelter for kids to sit and.
Oh, I see.
the
I
bus.
see.
School bus.
School bus. I'm
Yep.
like, does WRDA go?
So we can move on from that. Yeah, so this was actually stuff that I just chucked out for the board to discuss. So we don't necessarily need to go over that. I guess if you go back and slide, one thing I'd love to do some messaging on is the idea that this development is out of character for the neighborhood. That's one that's a little sticky, and
I guess you should preface that with, this is the project that's gonna suck, getting through ZBA, the other one's gonna be good. To put it in kind of layman's terms, as far as, you'll get one person for the Upton Street project, and the density down there because it's away from everything. This is Pleasant Street and everybody's faces, so all those concerns are gonna be, if there's 40 people in the room, they're there for this one.
Well, look, if this is the one that's going to suck getting through ZBA, it says a lot more about ZBA than it does about this project design or the
That's
developer.
fair. I just wanna be
So,
realistic.
listen, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I drive by this every single day, twice a day. The concerns about traffic in the area being increased are outsized. I know that people have concerns who live on that street about speed on the street. This has nothing to do with speed on the street. And if you walk that neighborhood or if you run that neighborhood, all you have to do is go down a little bit of a ways towards Providence Road, and around the corner there are a number of developments that look just like this, that sit quietly there and have been there for 30 years, and nobody who has moved into my neighborhood has any qualms with any of those. And this is just change. It's scary to people. And to the extent that, you know, we can get a developer to calmly address people's concerns, then the ZBA should have no concerns. If there are members of the ZBA who are already saying that they're a hard no on this, then that's a problem. And it could be a very potentially legal one for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So
These are
this
two-
project should be taken at face value and approached in a good faith.
Sure, no, I
They're
agree.
separate, right? They're separate application
Two
processes.
completely different lips, yep. So the developer wanted those to be kind of packaged. One of the first things I told them was, nope, ZBA aren't gonna think about them that way, the neighbors aren't gonna think
No.
about them that way, these are separate developments. That actually was something that they kind of, wasn't a benefit that they gave to the town necessarily, but it presents some challenges for them. So, because they ultimately, they have to manage these units, so this developer, maintains ownership of them and manages the units. It's more difficult for them to manage just 100 or 150 versus 250. It's a lot easier to manage more units and develop them, and, you know,
From an economic standpoint,
the lending, like all of the logistics, it would have been a lot easier for them to just do them together. So again, they've been pretty flexible, whether Pleasant Street goes through or not. I hope it does.
can they trade units between the two projects?
No, it's just impossible to do that. It just doesn't make sense for either the town or them.
So this is a project design that has elements of other projects that are already on Pleasant Street. So Millstone was a development, and I was on the planning board when that was approved, that I remember neighbors showing up saying, why would I want to look out my window and see other homes? Okay, well, you know, now you look at Millstone, it's a beautiful development. Is it 40B? No, but it went into a geographically tight area that the planning board really had to wrestle with. Didn't add a lot of traffic to Pleasant Street and fits in perfectly with the quote-unquote neighborhood character. The development next door on Peters Way is itself a 40B, a similar element to this development. Developments down towards, I forget the name of the street that's right off Pleasant, but as you're going towards Providence Road, are denser developments that feature townhouse-style apartments. Also an element that is found in here. This is a denser development will fit into that neighborhood. There's nothing about this that doesn't fit into the neighborhood character, unless you are yourself a character who lives in a, you know, colonial style house that's, you know, 2,000, 3,000 square feet, and you're looking at this going, well, that's unfamiliar to me. But other than that, this fits in with the character of the neighborhood.
So I guess that's a good discussion to have for when we try to base our narrative and our pitch, you know, because we know some of the things that are gonna be talked about.
Yep.
Pretty easily, and we can address them, and if we can address them in a material sense, kind of similar to how you just did. I just think it behoove us to have something formalized that we can all coalesce around and vote on and say, here is our opinion on this. This is why we think it's a good project. Here's some of the concerns that we've heard aired, and here's, you know, how we address them.
Yeah, I think it would, you know, obviously the select board's given its endorsement, which hopefully would go a long way. I do think it would help to get an endorsement from the Affordable Housing Trust as well. So
For sure.
some slides and endorsement, yeah, some sort of agreed, narrative to go along with it would help. So, that's all I got.
Just, for future lips, it's a little unfortunate we don't have the new production plan, because like in my mind, once we have a new one that is more geared toward the current priorities and such, like my view of that is it's kind of a North Star, and we are going to ask for ZBA's input, planning board, select board, for the HPP. And when projects come up like this in the future, we just point to the HPP and say this exactly meets what we're looking for.
Right.
We don't have that right now, but I think a lot of the people on these boards have an idea, and it's like we talked about in the past, density plus open space. Like, it's great.
This does align though with a lot of what's in the current,
In the current
housing
one.
production
Yeah.
plan. I mean,
Yeah.
it talks about housing diversity and
Yeah.
how we have a lack of it.
Yeah.
You
Our
know,
argument was there, I mean, we took them through this when they came before us. I think they heard us. So, and they read our housing production plan, so they're now one of 12 and a half, so it worked out really well. So, cause this is everything that our housing production plan as it currently says for, density. I know people don't like it and, they wanna look at a field and stuff like that, but for people who have jobs and are starting families, these are the type of things you need to provide them.
well, and just to be clear, this is never going to continue to be a field.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Going
gonna
to
be
be sold.
something.
Right.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know what the plan B is, but there's a plan B, or there's a plan A for some other developer.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Another thing that I had kind of thought about, when we think about development in Grafton, our land is precious. It's one of the most valuable resources we have in town. And to sort of quote unquote spend it all on single family homes, it's a good way to use up all of the remaining open space. So people clamor for open space. There's a tax benefit to this type of density that allows you to subsidize things like, purchasing the land up on Robinson and all that. So,
Yeah, it allows you to do both.
you can do both. It's not, there are some circumstances where, developing for housing or even developing for commercial is in direct conflict with preservation, and conservation. But this is definitely not one of them. The Conservation Commission came out on Pleasant Street and said there is zero value to trying to conserve a field of hay. There just isn't.
Yeah.
So, there's no conflict there. And the developers agreed, beyond everything we already talked about, to donate land to the town that's behind that can't be developed anyways. So that's going to be tacked onto a bunch of other land that's being conserved with conservation restrictions and whatnot. So, they're providing trails to get back there. The reason that that there's so little land in Grafton is because it's all been chewed up by single family home development. Or at least that's one of the contributors to it, because of the 40B phenomenon.
It's
Right.
not only 40B as far as a statute is concerned and what can be dictated, but, most of us here have had experience on the planning board. It is something that you're always cognizant of when a subdivision comes before you.
Yep.
Is because, when I was on the planning board and, every single plan that came before us, they were asked, will you have some affordability components to this? Now we just want to do the flexible design. We'll carve off the rest of the land, it will go into conservation, and we'll get the quarter acre lots, half acre lots, whatever it may have been for that particular subdivision. And that's what every single developer did. And the afterthought, or the thought as, you were getting to the decision-making process, is if we don't allow them these type of things, then they're just gonna go the 40B route, and the town was never in the ability to say no or dictate terms like this. And now you have, and I'm not saying this for you guys, I'm just saying this to air it. Now you have an economic position where developers can come in and build these big, sizable projects and they can actually afford, finance them and do them and make money off them. So in this particular one, you know, you're getting a fairly big dose of very affordable units in something that is also gonna be profitable for the developer, so it's actually gonna get it, cause that's the thin line for this, because if, you know, you go up another percentage point on, you know, cost of, cash, and this project might not be viable anymore at its current unit structure. So if they don't have a shovel in the ground in 2 years, you know, they might be paying an extra $300,000 or $400,000 a year in financing charges that just doesn't make the project viable anymore.
Right.
Right.
So, and I can almost guarantee that a company like Eastland has factored that in already.
Sure.
I mean, interest rates are taking an upward, you know, trend, which will probably continue, but, you know, smarter people than me, you know, be able to forecast that a little bit better, but, there
And
has
then
been some sticker shock.
And then the plan B is, okay, now it is back to 160 units because that's what we need in order to make the thing profitable.
Sure.
And then we say, no, we don't want to do the lip, and they say, well, the heck with you, we're just going to go do a 40B.
Well, and then you're also getting, you know, they're proposing 300 units up on Snow Road.
Right.
Then, you know, we can't really say no to that either. So it's not just that one, you know, the sort of plan B for this that happens if we fall out of Safe Harbor. It's all the other developments that come
Right.
into town. You know, I really want people to understand though too, the town is continuing to support conservation and land acquisition. So the select board just unanimously approved exercising our first right of refusal for the Robinson property down around Silver Lake. I expect we'll probably go the same direction for the next lot that comes up. So where we have critical areas in town to preserve open space, we're also doing that. So because we're now embracing affordable housing and some density of development, for all of those good reasons, it doesn't mean that we have to stop land conservation and acquisition of important parcels.
And we're doing it. I think Dave Robbins told me that 20% of Grafton's total land mass is conservation land.
Yep.
You know, a fifth. That's pretty serious amount of land mass.
It is good, yep.
There's a lot of package. Never mind. Okay. So, do we have anything else for Matt? I will put this on the agenda for next meeting, and we can discuss a little bit more in length. So I'll just block like a half hour. Make sure you're prepared and come with your thoughts, and then we'll start defining that narrative that
Okay.
we wanna pitch to the ZBA.
Good job, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is great work. This is a good proposal.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so the next two pieces are kind of rolled into one. If you haven't met her yet, this is Amber. Amber, quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amber. Work in the town administrator's office.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. I
So
serve the select board, FinCom, and you guys.
Awesome.
All right.
so
Probably could have put that agenda item first instead of making her sit there for an hour and a half
Well,
before getting
Talking to her. Yes.
all right.
Chris wasn't
So
here
Did,
to.
did that to Brittany too.
I was cognizant of that, and you know, when we discussed it, you know, some of these things are relevant to some of the feedback she's going to get, like from the initial agenda piece. So it would behoove her to know some of this. I know you could watch it on television, and there's no requirement for you to be here for a lot of these, but for this one, I just wanted to make sure people knew who you were in person, and we could, you know, kind of talk about how our relationship is, because Evan and I haven't really, you know, walked it through all the way. It took so long to get the position filled that we didn't really put any rules in place. So essentially, it's 10 hours a week. I've asked Amber just to, you know, provide a, you know, just like a consultant spreadsheet that says the hours she's working for us, so we know.
10 hours for the trust.
For the trust,
specifically.
yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be every week, but in,
Yeah.
you know, on average, that's what we were looking for with the position. So, you know, we did have a monetary consideration that we had suggested almost a year and a half ago now, right? But we haven't gone through that. So I'm hoping that Evan kind of finds the time to put something together for us, and then we can, you know, modify what we had originally voted on over that year ago. So Amber has some experience with handling some of the social media and stuff like that. So some of those initiatives that Matt brought up months ago, our website is way out of date, and we have no social media presence. So that's something that we can incorporate in those 10 hours if we want to. But that's kind of what I wanted to have this conversation now that, she's had a few weeks. She's handling setting up our meetings, setting the agenda, the good administrative staff support, but I think that's underutilizing her capabilities. So, we can talk about this a little further. We can talk about it tonight. It's the last pieces that we kind of have to walk through. But if there's anything that, jumps out at you that you want to suggest that we do, I had on there the newsletter. I think that'd be a really nice feature for us to have, just like an auto newsletter that's, has the substantive information and not just an agenda gets thrown to the clerk's office and posted in an inconspicuous place or whatever the rules are. And if people want to engage with us and enroll in it, especially for like the 25 Worcester Street crowd, or coming up on some of these other projects that we can, start fielding concerns from the neighborhoods around these other LIP proposals and GSX's proposal, a newsletter might be something nice that they can subscribe to. And then social media, we can use it to the best of our ability. I know nothing about Instagram, very little around Facebook, Snapchat.
Let's have an affordable housing TikTok.
Yeah.
MySpace, my
I
favorite.
just-
Do
MySpace.
dance challenges.
No, I'm not that far back. I
I'm too
understand
young
it.
for MySpace. I couldn't help you.
Oh god.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
I just, it's something that we have never used. We've never really spent much time on Facebook, but when Matt brought it up, it was a good suggestion that, we need to use some of these common medias. Most people aren't going to use them, but some people may. And we never had staff support that could handle making sure those things were actually done, because if we start the process and only gets updated every 6 months, well, you're not fostering any goodwill with people who are, relying on it for information. But if we have staff support and we control it, and stick within that 10 hours a week, well, 5 out of those hours is making sure that our media is updated. That's, a reasonable expectation to have.
What's the goal with what we're trying to do here? Is it just trying to keep people up to date on what the projects are, or is it sort of an interactive thing? Because there are fewer hot button issues in the community than what we do. One of them though happened to be masking in schools, and I saw the amount of time and energy that Jay had to put into managing the mask and COVID update page, and it was a lot, and she's going to get quickly overwhelmed if we're doing something like that.
All right. Okay, just from my perspective, if you followed the email chain that went back and forth with Beth Cohen, who's in a butter to the 165 Worcester Street, she had a bunch of very poignant questions and was asking for us to do a lot of work on her behalf to find her information for her.
She was.
And that's something that I don't think is our job, nor should it be our staff's job to do. But a lot of the information she asked for, if it was readily accessible, say, there it is. And I think that's helpful. It's certainly helpful from a staff perspective for Chris's department and for Amber herself with dealing some of these things, because the volume of that is going to, multiply as we get some of these bigger projects. And we don't have like a centralized resource of that information. Nobody's going to pick up the housing production plan.
Yep.
But if we can take the tidbits of it and have a good presence online, I don't really know how to do that.
Well, one thing that may help,
Amber may.
we're getting our, the town website redeveloped. And I've confirmed that, department, which would include the housing trust, similar to what, EDC has now, can kind of have their own, like, split off subpages with their own look and feel, and kind of manage the content on those. So that would be an opportunity to kind of revisit the information that we have out there on the town website and brand it and organize it the way we want with different widget elements and that sort of stuff. So I would suggest that as that develops, that we engage with William Blake, who's kind of been leading the effort for the website redevelopment, and essentially work with him to try to get the information that we want up there and organized in the way we want, and then we can basically, coordinate with Amber to keep it updated. And so I think that's a good starting place.
I don't think there's any harm in us in broadcasting in different social media, our agenda, our meetings,
Sure.
what's relevant and why we think it's relevant. We can't use that as publication for our meetings. I understand that. But, if
Just makes it more accessible.
that, yeah, the transparency issues, we get this constantly that, oh, I never knew this was happening. I never knew that was happening. I happen to be one of those citizens that pays a lot of attention to all this stuff and stays up to date on my municipal events, but of the other 12,000 voters in town, most of them don't. And I know it's not on me to make sure that they participate, but there's gotta be some give and take there. And to be honest, everybody who shows up to these things is only the people that say no. We never go and try to grab the people who it directly impacts. The people who are currently in affordable housing, are currently the starter families, and those are the real messages that actually resonate when it gets in front of ZBA. Because if ZBA is very similar to how the planning board was, if there's 30 people in the room, 29 of them are angry at you, and nobody ever says, well, I like this project, I want to move to town, but there's no place to afford in town. This is, I love this place, et cetera, et cetera. Those voices very, very rarely get heard in those rooms, and we need to find them.
Well, that part's hard because the people who will benefit from, say, Upton Street or Pleasant Street don't even know yet that they're going to benefit from Pleasant Street. There's going to be somebody living in, I don't know, Brockton, who's going to be like, yeah, I really don't want to live here anymore. We're looking for a place. I want it to be closer to my in-laws or whatever. And they're going to see a listing and they're going to drive out here and be like, oh, isn't that building nice? This is perfect for us. And I know we're going to have like local preference and everything, but very few people right now know that a year from now or a year and a half from now, Pleasant Street is going to be their new home.
Yeah, fair enough.
So like it's not just that they're unaware or we're not reaching them through social media. It's just it's not on their radar because it's not relevant to them yet.
Yeah.
And I think the part of the message I guess is going to have to be, even if it's not relevant to you now, even if it never is relevant to you, it probably is going to be relevant to someone or someone who is in that situation where they're going to need a place.
I guess, if we reach out or we have more avenues that we can, I don't think it hurts us at all.
Yeah.
So we might as well do it. But like campaign messaging, if you look at some of the campaigns in this recent select board run, I'm in favor of affordable housing. I've got kids that are getting out of college, they can't find a place to afford. Well, you're going to be in a position where you're going to actually do something about this. You have a whole litany of proposals in front of you to actually help that. Carl said it here, he has a son that, struggles to find an affordable place to live. Those are all things that can be communicated and we can reach those. Grafton's, by and large, kind of a transit community. Most of the people who live in some of these neighborhoods and stuff like that, they're here for 5 to 10 years and then they move somewhere else. So, and by and large, 95% of them don't participate in any municipal activity. So, you can find them some way.
Yeah, I mean, I could say I was renting as early as, or recently as 5 years ago. I didn't pay attention to any of this stuff. And
Sure.
it's what Ed's saying. You as somebody who's renting, or if you just don't follow town politics, none of this stuff is real until you see the building being built. And you're like, oh, cool, like, what's that? And
Yep.
so, but yeah, I think to maybe wrap up this conversation.
Oh, that's my high sign.
Is
Oh, it is 9:30.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think
Thank you, good sir.
I don't think doing customer service work should be Amber's responsibility. I think she could probably help us with outbound communication, either social media, newsletters, whatever, so that information about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's beneficial to the town is easier to find.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And look, you can still use outlets like Facebook for that.
Yeah.
You just don't allow kind of comments. You just post stuff.
Yeah.
And again, it's outbound only.
Yeah.
You know how to do that?
Sure do.
We're in great shape.
And then, you know, that's what correspondence is for. People want to send stuff to us.
Sure.
Go right.
All right, so Eric, she handled that part of it because I took a half hour for what you got to in about a minute and a half. Perfect, good for us. All right, we have some meeting minutes and then we can get out of here, so let's go.
Move we approve the meeting minutes from May 12th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye. Next one.
Move we approve the meeting minutes from July 14th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion?
Is this our last outstanding meeting minutes?
it's a question for
Pretty
Amber now.
close. I think I have the one in June left.
Good, everyone get off our back then. There it is.
No.
Sorry.
Is that part of discussion?
I just want to thank Amber for picking this up, so I don't have to do it anymore. Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Now, why don't we do that after we vote on them?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
Well, there is no discussion and a motion to adjourn, but I can wait.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We'll see you next time.